Steve here, doing another introductory video on SmartScore 64 NE Pro, produced by Musitech.com, a great program used for the digitization of musical scores for manipulation either in notation software or within SmartScore. Today's video is another part of the Beginner's Guide to Common Topics, entitled this time, Lyrics, Anyone? So we're going to be talking about lyrics. Our key concepts are the lyrics are tied or embedded in the associated notes, lyrics are in blue, how we enter lyric mode, how we move from a note to note in the lyric mode, and particularly how we can size lyrics to best fit the page. All right, we'll go ahead and we can get started. So here we are in the SmartScore. Sorry, folks, for my voice. We're going to go ahead and browse files within the task window of SmartScore. We're going to go find ourselves something to work on with respect to lyrics. So what I have here is a file from one of my fake books that we're going to do, Let a Smile Be on Your Umbrella. Now we've opened up the file as a PDF. Let's darken it a little bit by selecting the threshold. And we want to work on Let a Smile Be Your Umbrella, not Let It Be Me. So we're going to go ahead and use the image editor, see the tab here, to crop this down to just recognize Let a Smile Be Your Umbrella. So using my mouse, I've gone ahead and drawn a rectangle around Let a Smile Be Your Umbrella. And now the crop has highlighted so we can use it and we can crop. Now, as I've talked about before, SmartScore does not work directly from PDFs. SmartScore works directly from TIFs. So when we manipulate in the image editor, that is then changing the TIFF file. When we go now to recognize the TIFF file, it asks us to save the changes to the TIFF file. So we're going to go yes, and we'll rename it Let a Smile. So within the folder of lyrics, there's going to be the original TIFF file, the PDF, and the amended TIFF file. Okay, so then we begin recognition. Now, in the past, I've talked about not using the text box because when you're just doing band music, importing text can lead to a number of difficulties. But in this particular case, of course, we want text imported. And we can see under the text box, clicked here, we've got options. Recognize lyrics outside systems, suppress chord symbols, suppress lyrics, suppress fingerings. For right now, let's go ahead and begin recognition on Let a Smile and see what we get. This always comes up. We can unify. It asks us to save it. I'm not going to save it because we'll say that in a second. Let's go ahead and blow this up a little bit. We can blow it up in a couple of different ways. We can use the window over here in the bottom right. We can hit different quick keys, or on a Mac, I can simply hold down the command button and use my mouse wheel to make it bigger. So the first thing we notice, though, is the lyrics are not in blue. As I said in the startup screen, lyrics are tied to individual notes and they are in blue. Well, why is it not in blue? because that means in black that it is simply plain text. Well, the reason that it's not in blue is when SmartScore is recognizing a lead sheet like this, it does not know that those are lyrics. If instead of a lead sheet, this was a piano score plus a vocal score, SmartScore would be able to differentiate that those were lyrics. Well, what do we do about that? Well, we're going to go ahead and close. This is why I didn't save it. We're going to close that window. We're going to go back to the top menu, open up the task window, browse files again, find the folder that we were in, and open up the same TIFF file, because we can use the TIFF file now. We've already modified and saved it. We can go to Recognize, and now let's click Recognize Lyrics Outside Systems. In the case of a lead sheet, what happens then is, in fact, now the lyrics are imported correctly as lyrics in blue. Okay? Just going to go ahead and unify the score again. But we're going to save it this time. And I want to make sure I save it to where I want it to be. Let us smile. Okay. Using the command and the wheel, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger so we can start to work on it. Well, the first thing I want to comment on is you'll notice that the text and the chord symbols are rather large compared with the note. Why is that? Well, the file that we imported, the Let Us Smile file as a TIFF file, was not 8.5 by 11. It in fact was much smaller, probably 4 by 5. SmartScore will use the default settings for text, chord symbols, and lyrics based upon what is standardly used in an 8.5 by 11. But when we opened up a 4 by 5 file, that's why the words and the chord symbols look larger. There are 3 different ways to deal with this. One way is to resize the file that you're importing. If it happens to be from a fake book like this was, which is pretty small, 4 by 6, depending upon your facility, you can resize that image to a larger size and import it. The second way you could do it is, once it's opened like this, you can resize this document. And one would do that by going to the top menu, going to Edit, coming down to Format Score, scale the entire score, find optimal, OK. That will resize your score. I won't do that here because that actually takes a couple of minutes to process. But the problem with doing that is it will change the size here, but not here. So you won't have a direct comparison between this line and that line when you're editing. So in this particular case, for our purposes, let's do it the other way. Let's not change the size of the image. Let's change the size of the objects and the text. Well, how do we do that? Well, we go back up to Edit, and there's a couple of places these live, but in this particular case, just for clarity's sake, we can come down to Text Styles. when you click on text styles, you get your style box that has your default lyric, title, composer. You don't have to get here through this menu. You can right click in the right mode, but this is actually the simplest edit, right, text style. So let's make the lyrics a little bit smaller. Let's highlight lyrics, select a font, and we're at size 13. Well, let's bring it down to, oh, I don't know, let's say 8. Click OK. Click OK. Ah, you see, it's gotten smaller. Now, what about the chords? We're going to turn off, I'm going to show you how to turn off the chord fingering chart in a second. But where do these sizes live? These sizes, as you might remember, did not live in Format Score. Oops. And they did not live in text styles. So they didn't live in those two places. Where those actually live is in document preferences. Let's click on document preferences. And now you can see in document preferences, that's where text symbols, score symbols, page, chord symbols. There you go. And this is where you can select your appearance, guitar chord scale in %. So let's go ahead and cut those down to by a third, 66%. And then the name of the chord, these, right, F diminished 7, those are here in the chord name. Let's also reduce those by a third, 66%, typing in. Let's click OK and see what happened. They've now resized about correctly for the page. Now let's turn off viewing the fingering charts. How do we do that? Once again, top menu, view, show, chord symbols, show chord name only. Okay? Now if we wanted to make these smaller, and I'm going to make them a little bit smaller because we're going to work with these in another video. So I'm going to go back up to Edit. I'm going to go back to Document Preferences. I'm going to go back to Chord Symbols, and I'm going to make them 50%, the font name and size. Okay, just make them a little bit smaller. Okay. We will deal with the spacing of these in another video. Okay? So now let's start to work on our lyrics. But before we work on our lyrics, we need to clean up the missing measures because the lyrics are tied to specific notes. So we've got to make sure they're right. So I've done videos on this before, but I'll walk through it pretty quickly. As we've talked about before, any measure in yellow does not have the correct beats. So here we've got rainy. That should be a half note. Many ways to change a half note, but in this particular case, under the Node Editor, we're in Node Editor, Tools. We can click. There are 3 ways to do it, but we'll just click on it. Oops, sorry. Got to hit the select the Properties tab. We could have got there by hitting Escape. Brings you to Properties. Click on this, and we can make the duration 1/2. Okay, fixed. We need to add an F sharp here. So we can do that once again a number of ways. Keyboard shortcut for a half note is the number 2. So I'm going to press number 2. You see I've got a note. I'll put in the F. Go over to this window, pick up a sharp, or I could use a keyboard shortcut. Go to our next yellow. We need to make this note a dotted note. The C sharp is still present, so let's hit escape to go back to properties, which is always escape. Properties gets you back your pointer. Click on the note, change it to a half, leave the dot in place, fixed. Next one here, we need to add a quarter note. The keyboard shortcut for a quarter note is 3. Here we need to change this to a half note. We can do what we did before, but I'll do it a different way. I'll go ahead and press 2 to bring up my note as a half note. I'm going to change it directly by clicking on it. But remember, in SmartScore, it can't be green. If it's green, you will add an extra note into another voice. So you've got to move your mouse until it turns orange. Then you click. See? Half note. We need a dot here. Press a D. Pressing D just gets you a knot. Add the knot. And our last one is here, where we need to add a quarter note. So we've talked about adding a quarter note. You can simply press the number 3. But remember that SmartScore works very, very well with the quick pickup. And on a Mac, you hold down the command button, holding down the command button, moving your mouse over what you want to copy, left click, you've now picked up a quarter note, put it in place. Remember, don't put it on there. Don't make it green because you'll add another voice. Get it in the middle where nothing else is highlighted, and now you've added a quarter note. Hit escape to go back to the properties tab. Okay, now we can start to work on on the lyrics. You can't access any aspect of lyrics without entering lyric mode. Lyric mode can be accessed over here on the far side by pressing the lyrics mode, but it's much easier simply Shift L. Brings your pointer to the lyrics. Now, working with lyrics, you don't press on the lyric, really. You actually can see as you move that the notes turn green. So just let us smick. So let's go ahead and click in lyric mode on the note associated with smick, and you'll see now that we have a cursor. Now the cursor then defines what you can type in. So using the arrows, you can move letter to letter. So I'm just using the right arrow to move. I'm going to hit backspace, or in this case, delete. And I'm going to type in smile, S-M-I-L-E. So now we have that lyric correct. Now how do we move to the next note? If we're at the end, we can do it of the text. We can go ahead and do it either by arrows, tab, or spacebar. Your choice. I use the spacebar. So there we go. We've now B. Spacebar moves from note to note. Your arrow keys move within letters. But if you go, so watch, I'm going to press right arrow. I'm going to press it again. It will jump to the next. Okay? But spacebar goes note to note. So and it's not an So I'm going to use the arrow. Now you'll notice that there is a hyphen in between umbrella. SmartScore is smart in this way. When I go ahead and press the hyphen button, it will add that hyphen and immediately move to the next note. So watch this. I'm pressing the hyphen now. See? Now we have to add another hyphen at the end of brel. So I'm going to use the arrow keys. To get to the end, I'm going to press hyphen now, and look. Now we want to take away that underscore, so I'm going to use my arrow, go over one, backspace. Okay? I'm using my space bar on a, now it's got to be rainy, and you'll see from above that I've got to add an N using my arrow key. And you'll see that I have to use a hyphen. I'm going to press the hyphen. Okay. So now we got rainy. Rain. Then you need another hyphen and a Y. Go to the end of rain, hyphen. I'm going to type in Y. Space bar. And move my screen so we can see it. And we can see day. Now you'll see the underscore there. That's because in a tied note, SmartScore is aware that when you need to prolong or sing a note over a tie or a whole note, using the underscore automatically achieves that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that away. I'm going to take the underscore away. And I'm going to take away day. So I'm going to retype day to make it look like it's extended. So I'm going to, so D-A-Y, period, and I'm going to add the underscore. Watch what happens now. See? It adds the underscore for the tied note and immediately moves to the next syllable or the next note. Spacebar if you're sweet, not re, sweet E. Oh, we didn't add a hyphen. So I'm going to use, since we're at the end, I'm going to go ahead and use the space, the arrow key to go back, add the hyphen, right? Adds the hyphen automatically. Cries, just tell her. Arrow, arrow, arrow. Backspace. Type in that. Space bar to the next note. Type A. Space bar. Smile. Type in smile. Space bar to the rest. Space bar. Now we can just add the W. Well, basically, that's the process of going through. Now, I need to say a word about how one actually, there will be times and places where things outside of the designated lyrics will turn blue. These could have been in blue. That could have been in blue. It happens sometimes. How do you delete them? There is no current way to use any specific method to completely delete blue letters, which are text. You must enter lyric mode, click on the note, and then use the back. Well, there are a couple of things I should add. One of them, of course, is if you want to reposition your lyrics. How do you do that? Well, what you do is you enter lyric mode by pressing Shift and L. Now we're in lyric mode. And hovering your cursor over the system, enter nudge mode. And nudge mode, of course, is by pressing and holding the Shift button. And you, of course, now get your handles. And you can move the notes and the lyrics associated with those notes. Okay? Now, while we're in lyric mode again, I might as well talk a little bit about adding a second verse. How do you add a second verse? Well, take your pointer in lyric mode, activate a note, and you'll see as before, we've got the cursor blinking in the first line. All you need to do to start a second line is just hit the down arrow. So here we go, down arrow, and look. And now we can simply just start typing the second verse. I'm just going to go ahead and, do whatever we need to do here. Just space bar, let, space bar, A, space bar, smile, space bar, B, space bar, your, space bar, hyphen, BREL hyphen, LA. And there you go. That's how you do and enter a second set of lyrics. Okay, well, I think that about wraps it up for this video. Thanks, everybody. This is Steve signing off, and we'll be back with a follow-up video, I think, using this same file to have a look at chords and maybe some consideration of headings. Thanks. Bye.